more girls, not feel more like them. Yes, woo! All good. Good afternoon, good evening, welcome to SHOWstudio. We are here today to talk about Richard Quinn. Very exciting because it's the end of London Fashion Week. It's been an amazing week and Richard Quinn always tails the week. He's hugely influential at the moment, hugely popular. He's got new gen backing him. He was the first to be awarded the Queen Elizabeth Award for British Design, which is a huge deal. We'll dive into that a little bit later. But before I begin, because I forgot last time, terribly sorry, we'll start with the intros with you, Liam, and work right around this way.
Hi, I'm Liam Hess, and I'm a writer and features editor at Buffalo Zine.
Hi, I'm Barbara Grispini, director at The Arc.
Hi, I'm Gladman. I'm a fashion and culture writer.
Hi, I'm Elisa Palomino, BA Fashion Print, Pathway Leader at Central St. Martin's.
And I'm Georgina, I'm fashion editor at SHOWstudio, and a little disclaimer, I'm a wee bit ill, so I'm very sorry if I'm snuffly down the mic, you just have to let that one go. So as I mentioned, the Queen Elizabeth Award for British Design, super, super interesting. Last season there was the Queen, and everyone was melting in their seats, but I really want to unpick that award and what that means for British fashion and how we all felt when, because it was kind of a shock. I don't know who was there at the show, Barbara, I'm guessing you were.
No, I was in Milan.
Oh my God, okay. Because lots of people disappeared. So it was kind of blindsided a lot of people. There was like 3 rows of all these British designers, and I was the idiot who was like, oh my God, what's the blue cushion on the chair for? But it was kind of a smack your face moment. Everyone was like, oh my God, the Queen is here, and there was an award. But what do we think about the award? What does it mean for fashion? What does it mean for Richard Quinn? I'm going to you, Liam, first, so I'm putting the spot on you.
Sure. I guess it's interesting because, I mean, the significance of it, I guess, is symbolic because you've seen both in the kind of political sphere, you know, Downing Street hosting events during Fashion Week for designers, and also in the business sphere as well, this kind of legitimizing of fashion and this recognition of it as being a really important industry, and Britain as a really, really exciting kind of locus for emerging designers. So I think, yeah, symbolically, it's a nice touch to have like the kind of public figurehead of Britain, like acknowledging it in that way. And I also felt like it was a very appropriate choice for the first, I don't know if you guys agree, but because he's got a very strong British identity, but there's also a kind of subversive element as well. And you know, these kind of, yeah, obviously the floral prints which play into these traditions of, I don't know, everything from liberty to even more recently someone like Kath Kidston or whatever. It's like, it's a very British kind of aesthetic in that sense, that kind of, the floral prints, but then also there's something a little bit kind of kinky, a little bit sexy about what he does as well, but it's quite a British, I think, approach to sex. You've kind of seen it with the Christopher Kane collection, or the most recent one and the previous one as well, with this, slightly kind of, kinky is the word I'm going to use.
Kinky is the word, yeah. I love the idea that the Queen's kind of watching, she might have missed a little bit of latex there. Missed a little.
I don't know, I reckon she's seen some things in her time.
She's seen some things in her past.
I think his answer to it was like, well, I think she's seen much more than that.
She's seen much more than that.
She's seen a lot of things, she's not going to get scared by. But I think it's a really worthy recipient for that type of award, also for the type of community, like space that he represents, with the fact that, you know, he has this like print studios and he opens it to other creatives to use it incredibly, not only competitive prices, but also to be able to have access to like technologies like that. It's actually very difficult to get a hold on, and so it really represents something even more like for London than simply like, you know, not simply, but the design and the talent that comes with this. It's definitely very, very deserving.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. And just not to lose the track with craftsmanship as well, because I mean, when the students leave St. Martin's, one of the things that they miss the most is the print room. And the fact that he opened his own print room is so, I mean, all the money from H&M, he really invested in there. And it's just like...
that was a lot of money, I'm just going to say. It's like
£50,000, yeah. And it's not easy. And the fact that silkscreen printing is dying, I mean, obviously over like doing all the digital printing, but he's going back to having a traditional silkscreen printing studio where students can come. I mean, sometimes if the print room so much is busy, they will go there. And other designers are coming there, up-and-coming people like Loverboy and Christopher. So, I mean, it's just like, it's amazing that he's so generous as well. I mean, to share, because he's creating his own things over there, but he's open to other designers to be there as well. That's really, and it shows a lot about him as well and his personality.
Yeah, it does make total sense, because actually he is probably one of the most quintessentially British, while not being quintessentially British designers out there, but also he's giving so much back to the community. It makes total sense to give this first award to him. But what I'm interested to unpick a little bit is, so this is an annual award every kind of, for the autumn-winter season, they'll be giving one every year. But do you and obviously it's for British design, but there's so many amazing British designers that aren't necessarily rooted in London, creating stuff in London. And I wonder, are we a bit worried that there'll be some young British designers that are overlooked because they might not necessarily be so London-centric or British-centric?
It's possible.
It could be. I mean, and I think right now with the whole politic situation is a little bit complicated like that. But what I think is amazing about Richard is the fact that being so young, only on his third show, and only 2 years after graduating, that he was the first reception. I mean, for me, that's already incredible, because I mean, it shows how much faith we have in youth, and how much faith we have in what is going to be the next generation of British fashion, and that's incredible. I mean, we're not looking at somebody who's been there for 5 or 10 years, but somebody who just graduated, and it shows that there is an incredible pool of talent happening right now.
Yeah, for sure.
I think it goes in seasons, and I mean, the same time, like when John was coming out, when Lee was coming out, and there is some periods of time that everything seems a little bit stuck, but now it's like huge amount of really talented designers coming out there. So of course they should be acknowledged immediately, and we should try to help them as much as possible. So yeah.
I was going to say, sorry, I just added to that. I think obviously London is such a massive fashion hub. You know, it's got the biggest fashion schools, but you've got places like Glasgow, like Manchester, who really do have incredible creative scenes. And if you go to these places, you can see it, and it is a very different identity from London. And so, whoever is doing the intake for the the shortlist for like the autumn-winter season next year should definitely be looking like outside of London, because there's some really interesting perspectives coming.
I think it depends if it's something that they keep within the London Fashion Week umbrella, because I would imagine that, like, if let's say like it's something that gets recognized during the British Fashion Awards, it seems that for that they look at British talents around the world. But like very often, if it's during London Fashion Week, then it'd be towards somebody who is showing.
Yeah.
Within
in which
London
case, it's
Fashion
more
Week.
likely than not to be a young, slightly emerging designer.
Yeah.
I am really interested to see how they judge this. Obviously, Sarah Moa and the BFC are huge players in who gets chosen. But I'm interested to know if you have to be London-centric, if you have to have made things in London, how they choose, and how does it work if they pick someone who, for example, showing in Paris, like Marcus Almeida, for example, they just made the move to Paris. But
also because it has an angle, no, of like a social, like social consciousness. I thought I read that in the press release for the award, that like that it's one of the angles of this prize. So, I mean, you can look at a lot of amazing talents. They are based in London, but they might not necessarily have, as part of their practice or work or creation process, like something that has that angle, then it might have to be forced.
Quinn is quite unique in the sense that he's probably the only one that's giving back to the community, doing, well, I don't want to say only one, I'm sure there's lots out there, but like, so involved with how the prints are made.
I think also, I'm probably contradicting myself a bit from what I said earlier about the fact that it's rewarding this kind of Britishness or this sense of British identity, but I think another really strong reason to give him an award like this is that he's proven that he's very kind of mature in the way that he's thinking in the long term, and you know, there's a sense of kind of longevity to how he's approaching. I mean, he has a great business sense as well as a kind of really striking aesthetic, and the fact that he was so savvy with the money that he received from H&M. I think there are lots of designers who perhaps, you know, they receive that kind of money, they don't know what to do with it, and it can get kind of frittered away, whereas he was very careful about how he spent it, and I think that in itself is something that merits some kind of reward as well, because it's like you have to be able to balance those two things, and he does that really impressively.
Yeah. And I mean, we were talking about earlier on, but when somebody from Matches came to talk to the final year students over the summer, she was saying that Richard is like selling much more than like some designers who've been at Matches like for a really long time, and I was so proud of that. But you can see, I mean, if you saw the last collection, you almost wanted to have every single piece in your wardrobe. So I mean, it's just, I think it's really appealing to any sort of woman. So in a way, he's so clever because he's extremely talented. He's really good with his tailoring skills and obviously the prints, but at the same time, he's really good at capturing all the different clients.
He's got such a good business noggin, actually.
I wonder how the new collection is. I mean, obviously, you need to see in the showroom to really understand like each single piece that goes into it. Because the feeling that I had today by looking at it, I was like, oh, well, you know, like amazing, sort of like, you know, growth in terms of like, obviously you see there's a bigger element of sophistication, embroidery, etc., but everything looks like it's going to be like 3 times the price, which could potentially alienate your younger customers.
Because it's not cheap in the first place.
It's actually quite, I mean, obviously it depends where you compare it with, but actually for high-end and creative, it's reasonable for the special pieces.
This collaboration with Debenhams, which is still available. So there is, for someone that really isn't going to step up to that kind of, I guess, high-end price point, then there is an accessible way to get to your Richard Quinn fix, I think.
Yeah, I guess we just have to see what those pieces are, but I guess, that was my...
But I'm sure even like that was that beautiful marigold embroidery top. I'm sure you're talking about that one, which was absolutely amazing. I'm sure there's going to be just a printed version.
Yeah, exactly. I
That's
mean,
how it
because
works,
I mean, his possibilities with printing are endless. So I would imagine that he would do something like that. So you can either buy the incredibly special embroidered piece or like the amazing print of it, that then actually. But it's just going to be interesting to see how.
It's got such a signature aesthetic as well. You instantly know when someone's wearing a Quinn. But I am really interested to know who the clientele is, and Susie Bubble obviously wears it quite a lot. She looks amazing, and she was wearing it a lot of Fashion Week. But I'm interested to know who actually. Wow, that's an amazing price point, Richard Quinn at Debenhams.
Yeah.
Wow, look at that.
Yeah.
And it is more wearable as well. You know, it's like that it's the versatile clothes. And I think having seen, there's a couple of collections in London this time where I was looking at them, looking at the clothes and thinking, this is only going to look good on a woman if she's 6'4" and size 6 and whatever. It can be quite exclusive, I think, sometimes with the more kind of avant-garde designers, whereas Richard Quinn's clothes look great on any shape or size, and I think there's something to be said for that. It's still very fashion forward, but it doesn't compromise on the fact that it's still kind of thinking about a woman's body and that kind of impeccable cut and that he's so brilliant at.
Yeah.
Absolutely, I think it does really translate for a different kinds of clients. If you're talking about like who the audience is, in the sense that you have people like Amal Clooney wearing it at the Met Gala, which I think was a bit of a shock for. Because she tends to wear something that's, she's always fashion forward, but she tends to wear sort of block colours, things like that. And that was a really bold look, I thought, for her. But she's very glamorous. She's got the polished hair. She's got like the Kate Middleton almost hair with the blow dry. And then obviously, catwalk-wise, there's the morph suits, that kinkiness that you were speaking about, and there is that level of I guess, unconventionality, but it also translates into a much more elegant sort of scenario as well. And you've also got the Debenhams, and so the Debenhams customer is probably someone looking for like a party dress or a wedding dress or something like that, which is obviously very different from a fashion like a sort of a straight up fashion context. That's something that you want to wear with your family in a church or something. Yeah. So it is somehow translating to all of those things while still retaining this energy that we're all really enjoying, I think.
It's actually hugely impressive if you think about it. That this is his third show, and he's got such amazing range. Like you just said, hitting so many different clients, hitting the nail on the head with community, hitting the nail on the head with awards,
and retaining that identity all the way through as well.
Exactly.
Not diluting that.
And being very down
still recognisable.
And he's a nice guy.
We love him.
No, but it's true, that's so important. I mean, and really close to his family. And I think sometimes when you have that kind of rocket career, immediately you lose track of who you are, where you're coming from. And I mean, he's so close to the family, and that's really, really important. I've seen and I've worked, with people who really lose track of that, and then that's the end. So, I mean, it's really important, that family factor as well.
And we're being very praiseworthy and supportive, but I'm going to throw a ball in the china shop here. So the Balenciaga debacle that hit Diet Prada. What do we think? Do we think it's justified? So I've actually got Diet Prada.
Can we go back, because I haven't seen that on Diet Prada. What's happened?
So
what did they post?
This was from last season, so not this season.
Oh, got it up.
This is the old post. They're comparing the two, and they said something. I mean, there's this one as well, but they said, we heard Queen Elizabeth. We heard Queen Elizabeth was in attendance at Richard Quinn's show yesterday. Wonder if she spotted the Demna Balenciaga references. Lol.
Can I just mention one thing? That Richard Quinn was actually doing this before them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because he was like, I remember at the time, I think he was one of the finalists at the Eats Award.
Absolutely, with his BA collection.
He already had this like patch of like flowers and suits, etc. So it's more likely there's the other way around.
Totally. Yeah.
It's quite interesting because obviously, I mean, thank God for Diet Prada for a lot of things. It's quite interesting that it's come out in the other way around.
Yeah, I would really recommend to have a look at his BA collection, because it was all about that.
Yeah.
And it was basically,
already was fully covered.
And it was like half of the collection was like one print, the other half was another shape. I sent it to you a couple of days ago.
Yes, you did.
So
I think if they're both referring to some degrees to like all Margielas, I think, in terms of the suits and there's elements of it, but in the directness of how they look to each other, I think it's.
And his entire, I'm sorry, I'm very biased.
No, it's good. We need a bias.
I'm his tutor, but all through his BA, studies, that was his work. I mean, it's all looking at 50 shapes. It's all doing the most beautiful illustration, working with prints from interiors, redoing them, and that's been him, and mixing things together. He's been like that for every single project that he's done. So he's been very truthful to his style since the beginning.
Yeah, totally, from the beginning.
Yeah.
I like looking at Diet Prada because they always have interesting captions, and I really like seeing the things together, but I see them more as places to see the connections between things, and obviously they sometimes phrase it as like very much like a copying call out kind of thing, and that's not what I enjoy them for. And I think specifically in this, as we've heard testament here, Richard Quinn this is very strongly his aesthetic. Demna, as we know, takes influences from all kinds of stuff, and I think there's a very interesting perspective where actually, why are they all doing them right now at the same time? Why has Richard Quinn done so well with this at the right time? Why is Demna choosing these references to pick from when he quite clearly has a very broad kind of pool to pick from? I guess there's like Marine Serre as well, obviously using kind of like the silk scarf prints and that kind of patchwork thing. So there's a lot of this kind of splicing going on. I think Richard Quinn's got his very own specific aesthetic, and so I don't agree with Diet Prada in that it's a sort of a rip-off at all.
I also think there's a slight, sorry to interrupt you, Barbara, I think there's a slight problem with calling out the designer who's only been around for 2 seasons.
Yeah, exactly.
Rather than the established head of house.
Especially at Balenciaga, which obviously is like one of the most storied couturiers
Yeah.
ever. And so there was like, I think back on this post, there was a sort of a really puffy dress with like tiered ruffles.
Yeah.
Like that's a very old Balenciaga silhouette. But
Yeah.
then, of course, that silhouette will be taken and run with by
millions of people.
Yeah,
I mean,
of
it's like, I
course,
mean, if we
yeah.
have to look at people that take from old Balenciaga and Margiela, I mean, and
even-
take them off the calendar, we're left with nothing.
We do
Well,
work with the Balenciaga Museum in Guetaria. We've been working for 4 years. The students go there, they go into the archives, they really look inside of the garment. So they have an incredible opportunity to really work directly with the original garment. So, I mean, of course, they're going to be influenced, and of course, it's going to be part of the culture for the rest of their life.
You can look at every single big fashion house and students alike. I mean, those are not, ingrained part of like,
And in
like
this
how
instance,
fashion has evolved.
yeah, and I think in this instance, I mean, if you had to guess which one of them was going to be the one copying someone else, it's obviously going to be Demno. But he's very open about it. Like, he said like tabbies down the runway or whatever. Like in the last collection, it's like he's very transparent about the fact that he copies or I don't know, paraphrases previous designs
Yeah.
in that sense. But I thought also,
No, go for
sorry,
it.
no, just
Not
one
at
last
all.
thing. No, I was just going to say, I thought also we were talking just before about that how the kind of really strong visual impact of the kind of opening looks of the collection today had, which were all black kind of silhouettes, and in some ways that's kind of like it could be a bit of a like cheeky riposte or whatever to
Yeah,
those
shall we look at-
criticisms and
shall we have a
also
look?
and also
Keep
the
going, keep
criticisms that he's potentially a kind of one-trick pony with the prints and the
Definitely.
splice prints and that kind of thing. It's
Yeah.
like
I was
demonstrating his.
really pleased to see, because before I was thinking about him and that he's obviously got a very strong aesthetic, and what I really wanted is that obviously he's got lots of acclaim. He's been he's been awarded the Queen Elizabeth Award. Loads of people. He's got lots of hype around him. People really love him, and so I sort of didn't want him to be locked into an aesthetic and felt like he had to keep doing the prints. And I can see here that he's kept that, but also progressed it. And so I'm really happy that he's still developing and still changing, because it makes you realise how much of a dynamic designer he really is.
That is absolutely key, because I mean, very often what I've seen happening, especially with designers, they're particularly good with prints, which is something very immediate, that after like a short amount of time, they start to go like, well, but I don't want to be identified for a print designer. And so they would just all of a sudden like discard it entirely, which can be like quite disastrous. And it's, as you were saying, it's like, it's really great that like with the show today, he's shown that he can do other things, but at the same time he retained the prints, also because, as we were saying, like with the type of like facility that he has, his possibilities of prints are like endless. And commercially, you're always gonna sell prints. Like a print is something that stores always need, that people always want, etc. So
Yeah.
that's a huge treasure. But as you say, it's really, really nice to see that like it also shows, you know, different skills like of his work.
And I do love his winter collections because they have more of a tailoring into it, and I think obviously summer is a bit lighter. You have a lot of dresses, but I mean all the tailoring pieces here are really strong, and to open it with the black looks, I think is amazing, because it's like, okay, I am a really good tailoring designer. These are my skills, and have a look at them, and I think that's really important for a designer to be able to show his strengths.
And when you look at those dresses, the level of refinement of the construction is like, for someone who's only 3 seasons in, it's pretty extraordinary.
It's incredibly
and operating
mature.
a small team.
And I have to
Incredibly
say, it also seems that he's really like evolved, because I found him before like very skillful, but I think you could see there was an emergent designer, so there was some element that was really sophisticated, like the taste and the prints, etc. But then not necessarily on a 360 degrees, because obviously when you start this, you can't be already like 100% in everything. But what it showed tonight, this afternoon, is that really, that's what you were saying, the level of refinement, like of each of the pieces, it was really high-end.
Really
like quite impressive, because like when you think it's like 3 seasons, it's like, whoa.
It's amazing. You were quite right. Before, it kind of felt very London emerging.
Yeah.
And this is...
This was luxury. Like,
This is incredible luxury. This is like borderline couture.
Yeah, because I've always found him really interesting, kind of as a person, and in terms of what he stands for. Even something that was on display today with the fact that he invited all of the students from the art classes from his school. I don't know, do you know the exact story behind that?
Students.
Let me get the formal information. So he said, guests from my former art classes are from Chislehurst and Sidcup Grammar School, St Thomas More Catholic Comprehensive School and Central St Martin's. And so he invited a lot of children and school kids to watch the show. They were sat all on one side. It was really magical. And it was a statement because there's been a 34% drop in arts GCSE entries between 2010 and 2018. It was a message to say how seriously art subjects are under threat in the secondary schools in England.
Amazing.
Which is really amazing.
Yeah.
I also think it's quite impressive that he's using this platform that the Queen's Award has given him to send a message,
Yes,
if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Like what you said about using the awards and the kind of funding that he's been given and use them wisely. It's like this, he's taking it and running with it rather than just being like, having a freak out. So
Yeah.
that's also just so nice as well. Like given, you know, what we were talking about different kind of areas of the UK and their creative scene, and that you were saying that it comes in sort of waves. So sometimes you have a little slightly sort of dry period, and then you have like a sort of huge upswell of interesting designers, you know, return to the scene. I think, you know, Richard Quinn's obviously trying to start that off for like the next 10 years when, you know, those GCSE students are like graduating from their MAs.
Well, I wonder why. I mean, unfortunately, I haven't retained that information. But I remember Sam Moore talking about like this drop in uptake in art, and I wonder if it's linked to the tuition fees, etc.
Probably.
Because that is a big, you know, obviously a problem. Like the big elephant in the room.
I would very much assume.
I mean, it's an expensive subject to study at school level, art, textiles, whatever. I mean, the materials alone.
And the cost of education is.
Yeah, so if you're cutting corners, those are going to be the first things to go always.
It was also to be able to stay in London as an artist, like to actually have space to create. It's challenging.
Yeah, and particularly for European students who are going to become international students in a few months. So I mean, that's definitely a big threat to have a big pond of.
It'd be interesting to see what happens, because now, for example, like after graduation, like if you are like from Asia or from America, you have to go back to your country. So it'd be interesting to see what happens with European as well.
Yeah, but not only that, for UK students who are trying to get a job in Europe as well, because it's going to be as difficult that for the rest of the international students. And I mean, that's something that is extremely threatening. I mean,
I guess for creatives it's a touch easier than other type of jobs, because very often, like, to get a visa to work somewhere, the employee needs to prove that there's nobody within their country that has the same set of skills that you do. And with creativity is more individual, but
in America,
we're talking about a fraction.
But yeah, and top jobs. But
Yeah, top jobs.
A lot of a first entry job is really difficult for the students. So.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I guess it's even starting kind of earlier than that. Like the kind of emphasis even at primary school level is like so much testing and exams, and that it's a sort of a rigorous process in order to get gainful employment, which obviously there's not a direct path for creatives, because things work in it's not we'll just turn up to the office and do that kind of job. Like, it's commissions, it's, you know, interning, it's making connections, things like that. So even from the beginning, there's this filtering out of arts and the development of the creative arts, even from a primary school level, let alone the people that get all the way through and then try and get into college or university.
But I think for him to invite all his homeschool kids and to say, this is me only 2 years after I graduated. This is
It's a huge message.
I mean, this is where you could be in a few years' time. It's fabulous. I mean,
all the kids were clued up. My editor went and spoke to them and said, "Why are you here?" Well, in a nicer way, I'm sure. And they were saying, "Oh, we're here because we're supporting this," and they knew exactly. So
been invited.
Yeah, and they were primary school. Well, not primary school. I'm sure they were much older than that, but it was actually a really amazing message. Not least just because they had the whole front first row, second row, third row, I think, in some of the best seats in the house, and so half the kind of press were pushed in, and I think that's quite powerful as well.
The kids are all right, basically.
The kids are all right.
And how much longer is that going to happen? Because I mean, soon it's going to be so difficult to get into one of his shows. So I mean, it's just like
it's already like one of the hottest tickets in town.
I think also it's just brilliant for them to be able to, because I think what maybe gets lost is this idea that an art degree or a fashion degree can only lead on to a career as an artist or a fashion designer, and you need to kind of, and it opens, going to a fashion show, you see all of the like hundreds of people buzzing around, and you realize that there's this whole kind of ecosystem that surrounds it, and it's not as narrow as that, and that those kinds of degrees can take you to all sorts of different places within an industry, like we were talking about at the beginning, the fact an industry that's been formally recognised by the Queen, like it's such a big part of the British economy.
Yeah.
And well, because obviously Richard Quinn studied set design before, so we were talking about the beautiful projection and the kind of the music and things like that, and it's just being in that space, getting to see all the things that were going on. Then, you know, maybe if it's not fashion for you, maybe it's set design. You can go into theatre. You can.
You could do incredible.
So many of us are
interior design.
slash CVers at the moment, so yeah, the opportunities are endless, really. Let's delve into the show a little bit more. So, as you mentioned, there's a projection, and that's a collaboration with Epson, which Richard Quinn does for his screen printing. He works with Epson very closely. They've got kind of a thunder and lightning. The underlying theme was Gatsby-esque, so the thunder lightning is kind of this beautiful Gatsby romantic running through the rain moment. And then there was part of the London Philharmonic Orchestra playing as well, which is kind of incredible.
Yeah, right?
So huge kind of emotive show. Lots of people came out saying it was really moving and wonderful, but also with this amazing dark undertone. The first looks are really dark and moody, as we were saying earlier. And he mentions in the notes, in these dystopian times, there is a search for the things that can light our way, and this collection of pushed colour print and hyper-glamorous shape to the max. And equally important to me, however, is celebrating the community I come from and thanking British art education for the fact that I am business today, which is lovely.
Amazing.
Yeah, you definitely get the sense of sort of emotion with this show, and it's sort of I guess. So much of fashion, it seems these days, is very much kind of almost hyper-ironic or very sort of like an arch look at lots of stuff, which in many ways is also enjoyable, but it's nice to see something that is almost earnest. Yeah. Like these things are romantic. This is like you can see that lady in the leopard print in the kind of like an archetype, like as you said, running through the garden, or you know, like twirling her finger through a phone cord and plotting to murder her husband or something. And it's just that it's so nice to feel have that fantasy in fashion at the moment, when so many things are ironic, I think.
I think that lack of cynicism is really refreshing, definitely, particularly with young London designers, because I mean, this has edge, but it's not gimmicky, and it's very it's just very romantic and sincere, and I think there's something to be said for that. Yeah.
I love that if you took away all the context and you were just looking at the clothes, you wouldn't know that there's a political statement kind of imbued in them. They kind of stand as these really beautiful garments on their own, and it's digging deeper when you see the kind of the dark black latex and the moody first looks. You're like, oh, okay, I see where you're going here.
And obviously now he has more means for the collection. I mean, and you could see the materials, but still, he's so good at choosing the materials he's printing on. And I really loved like the touch of embroidery. We were talking about the feathers, but he didn't go all the way. Like some designers, when they have a little bit more of a budget, they just go a bit crazy, and they used the entire fabric system that they could find out there. But he's been very clever about that as well, and quite sustainable in the choices that he's done. So I think that's very clever, the way he's done.
God, that was so bad.
I thought it was really interesting the parallel you drew between Christopher Kane and Richard Quinn earlier, with about the kind of like the kinkiness and also the domesticity a little bit, because some of the prints in here are that sort of like that tea rose kind of almost almost chintzy, in the sense like they almost have an interior feel to them. They feel cozy and warm and inviting in a way that you know, where you can have floral prints that are, you know, technicolor or harsh or like energizing, and these ones are much more kind of draw you in, touchable. And I feel like that's something that Christopher Kane had done previously with his kind of using tea towels and that kind of sort of, you know, the kitchen sink with the rubber gloves and things like that. There is, while it's still elegant and country house, it's also got that, I guess, British everydayness to it, even though it's these couture shapes.
Totally.
Mixing so many things in there, it's really impressive.
These opening black looks are just amazing.
Yeah.
I think my only criticism would be, and I'm only saying this because I feel like I need to temper my wild admiration, because it's clear that I'm a massive fan, but I wish that he'd left out the kind of sportswear. There was a look with a leather jacket and a denim look as well. I kind of wish he'd just committed to the full fantasy, but
Yeah.
And the Palomino prints, I mean, that
I'm
was
less into the tropical
Was
print,
it
I
a
must
print?
admit.
Yeah, no, me neither. It
it was
wasn't
the real,
my fave.
pony, yeah.
But I really hope someone wears this to these are Oscar dresses to me. I really hope
The
so.
one that's all white with the small little black kind of fronds on them.
So fabulous. And I love that mullet.
And the Ungaro kind of shapes and I really love those cocktail dresses.
It's just beautiful. And the attention to detail. He worked with Swarovski on this, so much bling.
Oh my goodness, yes.
But it was brilliant. It
Yeah,
wasn't.
that's great because when it's like that, I think it should be impossibly bling, because then it becomes incredibly aspirational for whoever can afford that piece to actually either have it or wear it, because it's like, where else do you find something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you go hard or you go home, I think. Was
This is just really wonderful.
It's also really nice to see, I guess, because it's dresses and it's very feminine. You know, you have both got kind of it's got this 20s-ness to it, which isn't obviously the most obvious feminine thing. It's meant to be, waistless, but you do have this, especially this fourth look here. Because of the black, and then it looks wasted, and obviously previously he's done much more sort of 50s almost ball gown shapes. It's really nice to see a sort of a femininity that doesn't feel reductive. It still feels, it feels like everyone who wears this would be intelligent and be able to tell you about, something crazy they read, or in it, like a really interesting documentary, but also enjoy being a woman and not, the fun of dressing up.
it's a very powerful femininity. I think Amal Clooney is kind of the perfect ambassador almost for Richard Quinn brand, because it's like beauty and brains, but this real kind of strength.
You can have it all.
You can have it all. And I think also those kind of slightly dominatrixy undertones as well add to that sense of kind of strength.
I love the leather tights.
Yeah, and I really think Monsieur Arnaud should be really looking at this, because I think Richard should be in Paris anytime soon. And
I really hope he doesn't.
yeah.
I hope he stays
It's
in
very
London.
difficult for emerging young designers to go on the show in Paris.
Not to show, but I think he should be having
At a house.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he has the strength and the energy to be coping with his own brand.
Can you imagine if you went to Balenciaga?
One thing I did think was really interesting, so obviously we did have the sort of morph gimp suits at the beginning, but then actually over the rest of the collection, more faces are appearing, and something that had struck me when looking at his previous collections is that that you couldn't see the woman in the clothes, because you see this, printed body. And it had occurred to me that maybe that's something about, it's about hiding identity in some ways, and so the clothes speak for themselves, and so in this respect, this new collection where more faces are on show, maybe it's a little bit, it did feel a little freer in some way, which isn't like a criticism at all. It just felt a little bit more relaxed in the way that maybe previously it had felt like we are doing a thing here. And this one felt a little bit more like, okay, so maybe now I've arrived. But maybe that came with that, maybe that's a whole sense from the construction of the garments, as you said, that it's become this sort of, it's quite clearly progressed from a emerging designer to someone who's arrived.
Yeah.
There's a bit more of a confidence in that
exactly.
ease, I think. 'Cause
Execution and
because that's kind of what I was saying earlier, but then I got sidetracked by the lovely students from the art school. The very heartwarming story. But I was going to say that I've always admired his politics and admired what he stands for. But this was the first collection for me where I was really wowed by him. Yeah.
And he's an amazing real all fashion couturier. I mean, I've never seen really few people who can draw with the facility that he does. I mean, and it comes so fluidly to him. So I think it's great that he's surrounding himself with the right people who can also translate all these things for him as well. So it's just incredible, and so many ideas. And again, he's so good 360 degrees with all the accessories, tights. I mean, and it's great. I mean, somebody was talking about home range. Of course, absolutely everything.
Oh, I would buy that. That sounds great. I'm a total idiot, and I forgot to bring the invite onto the panel. But the invite was a heat tech piece of card, so it was all black. And the more heat you press on it, the more you see the roses underneath, which I think is just like the most perfect summary for this collection. Kind of dark and moody, and there's light within the dark, and kind of the heat is also a little bit of the kink element. And just thinking about absolutely everything, the total 360 is so fantastic.
Absolutely.
I will throw a slight spanner in the works, and because he has such support from the BSc and Sarah Moa, and not that it's not deserving, but it does make things a hell of a lot easier when you have that backing. And he's got so many people behind him and supporting him, and I can't help but wonder, would this all be so easy had he not?
No way.
No, of course not. No.
Of course not. It's the access to even just be able to show what you do and have a sponsor show and everybody turning up. I mean, I remember when he did the first show in Liberty. I mean, I think it was Sarah just emailing everybody personally and be like, "You've got to see this."
Doesn't that make it a little bit difficult for other designers trying to break it? I mean,
I always feel very split about this type of topics because I do think that London offers the biggest diverse opportunities to designers compared to any other city in the world. Of course, it can be for everybody because it's a limit. As you graduate from school, etc., there's smaller spaces for everybody. I don't think it makes it. I mean, obviously, you need to get the attention of these people and move something in their heart and passion for wanting to go the extra mile about. Even just talk about you. And similarly, I guess it's not just the BSc and Sarah, it's also people. I speak a lot with buyers who buy his collection, and they're just crazy over the moon about it. So they rave about it to everybody else. So other buyers and other people who have not seen the collection, etc., they go and check what it is, and then everybody tries to go to the showroom, even if they haven't seen a picture, just because the amount of people that have been talking about it. And I guess that's all part of you need to get noticed somehow, and of course be noticed by the right people.
But also hard work. He's always been the last one to leave the prim room, the last one to leave the college, and so stubborn. I mean, it's just I don't know anybody as stubborn as him, so it's just so good. Yeah, because you have to be, there's so much competition out there, and you really need to know what you want, but you need to work really hard, and if you get a no, carry on until you get your final answer. So I think that's, again, obviously he's got all these prizes, obviously he deserves it, but other people maybe, then I don't believe so much about luck. I mean, I think you bring your own luck, but working really hard and then getting noticed and everything else happening. I totally agree that London is absolutely the best platform for any emerging designer to really make it. But he works so hard, and he's got incredible work ethic. So I don't think he's the party boy at all. And it's great as well. And you have to have a good balance, but all these hours at the end, I think they pay off, so
Yeah, and I think it's maybe less to do with the opportunity itself and more what you do with that opportunity, because there are so many schemes. Well, there's not endless schemes, but there are plenty of schemes available for these designers. And if you were to look at a list of, say, every designer that's gone through Fashion East or New Gen or whatever, and how many of them are still going as a kind of own name brand label, I guess, it would only be a fraction of those people. And so I think it's impressive. I think he deserves it more than most because of what we were talking about earlier, and this kind of business, this pragmatism that he has, and this kind of maturity.
Yeah, because also the limelight, and the hype, they can bring you up, but it can also kill you and your business very quickly.
True.
It's like
Very
it
true.
really takes a very level individual to navigate through, especially an acceleration like the one he had. You know,
Yeah,
that's really like,
unbelievable speed.
yeah.
Well, I suppose that is kind of also what he's doing. Like, you know, if he's got these opportunities, and he has got the support of some really major players, but then he's giving, giving chances to GCSE students. He's doing all the other stuff. So it's like he's taking them and then showing them out a little bit. Like the glass ceiling stops with Richard Quinn.
The Robin Hood of fashion.
The Robin Hood of fashion. No, I love that. Yeah.
Cute.
Yeah, I also think it gives a really good, it kind of really reinstates that London is the place to come for this. People looking outside in are like, wow, London is producing this, giving this opportunity, supporting in this manner. Excuse me, sorry, I told you I was ill. And it kind of just pushes everyone back towards London and just kind of reminds everyone that we're here and we are still relevant.
And he's a great ambassador for London fashion as well,
sure.
in every sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and nothing has been given him for granted. I mean, he was up on his scaffolding up to a few days before his show and just like working to pay his collection. So I mean, that's something that for me is so important because I mean, it's different when you really have all the money to put up a collection or somebody who's really backing you up, a family, but when you really have done everything by yourself and you're really working until the very last minute. I mean, I think that's really important as well. I mean, and to me, he has all my support in that degree as well because it makes a big difference because you work really hard to get where you are. So that's really, you can really look back and say, okay, be really proud of what you have achieved. I think that's important, yeah.
Well, we're all very smitten kittens with Richard Quinn, so it seems. It's been a very biased panel, I feel.
Yeah.
But where do we want to? What's happening next with Richard? What do we want to see? Where's the progression? I mean, I don't think anyone could have predicted how wonderful this season's gone. But for the next one, what do we hope for?
I really think he has to be
Keep doing what he's doing.
yeah, but also
More of the same.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, I think the next step is to be head designer of a big fashion couture house in Paris, absolutely. And I'm kind of surprised that it hasn't happened yet. I mean, because he has the talent, he has the commercial eye to it, the connections, and I think he would do an amazing job.
Would his business be able to handle that? Like for him, like to take, because when you had one of the big fashion houses, you had to consider at least 50% of your time it goes. Would his business at this stage be able to handle like him stepping out?
Yeah, that would be my worry, is because I really want to see more of his thing than I do.
Yeah,
I want him to
exactly.
keep going and like further consolidate his Richard Quinn-ness before he goes somewhere else, although I would so love to see him at the head of somewhere big as well.
And I think also to, like we were saying, or like someone mentioned earlier, this idea of a homewares label I think is really interesting, like to kind of extrapolate or that his aesthetic into other areas and diverse and become, I don't know, have a broader reach because he's already shown that he can do that well with the Debenhams collection, which is kind of, it's not diluted, it's still very tasteful, it's still very in keeping with his
Which is a real rarity, actually.
Yeah.
But I think Richard is quite ambitious, I mean, and I think in a way that would be an amazing opportunity for him.
If anyone could handle it and feel like he could, I feel like I've heard so much about his sort of business prowess and his sort of groundedness that I feel like he'd take it.
I'm going to stop us there before we start like melting into the, melting into the floor, like swoon, swoon, swoon. Thank you guys so much for being here and chatting with me.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you guys for watching at home. Very much appreciate it.